These women are completely out of touch with reality, and you're right, ABC...
These people have no idea what's going on in the world, and you're right. ABC needs to wake up.
Democrats in the media are now unloading all their nasty attacks on rising Trump White House star and new press secretary, Karoline Leavitt. Watch this.
Democrats in the midterms are targeting rising Trump White House star and new press secretary, Karoline. Watch this video to hear what they're saying about her.
Women are completely out of touch with reality, and you're right, ABC...
Today, we're diving into what happened, why Karoline Leavitt's expose has everyone talking, and what it means for the future of the show. If you've been wondering what sparked this meltdown, you're in the right place. Karoline Leavitt has stirred up major drama on TV, and it's all due to her shift in the political landscape.
These women are completely out of touch with reality, and you're right, ABC should...
People on the left love to stir things up, but when Karoline Leavitt became Trump's press secretary, they bit off more than they could chew. Democrats quickly began launching their attacks.
Behar calls her a 10. I mean, how dare she objectify a woman with a sexist rating system, but it's such a typical thing from a 1 point.
Not only did their smear campaign fail, but it completely backfired. What began as small-scale jealousy is now unraveled, ruining their reputations. Thanks to Karoline's no-holds-barred attitude, the hosts of The View are scrambling to clean up their own mess, and the fallout is nothing short of spectacular. Joy Behar, who claims to be a feminist and always speaks about supporting women, crossed a line that's hard to ignore. Instead of acknowledging Karoline Leavitt's accomplishments, she reduced her success to just her looks. This behavior reveals a clear lack of morals. They claim to support women's rights, yet belittle a young, successful woman in the same breath. Karoline is a true leader, and she didn't hesitate to call these woke figures out.
Can either get on board or they can prepare to lose another election just like they did on November.
But wait, what if Karoline gets a 10? Well, leave it to Greg Gutfeld from Fox News to deliver the punchline in his signature style. Greg didn't hold back, throwing some major shade at Joy Behar that had everyone talking. Let's just say his comments didn't do Joy any favors, and the internet hasn't stopped laughing since.
Because she said something yesterday that really pissed me off. And that was, she said, there will be no wokeness here.
Oh, yeah.
Let me explain something to you. Because without that wokeness, you...
Karoline didn't just criticize Joy Behar. She also took aim at the Democratic talking heads at CNN. She made it clear they have two choices: ride the Trump wave or fade into obscurity. Once Trump's time is up, they'll act the scandals and media-driven distractions that keep them in the spotlight. Without their usual propaganda machine spinning stories, their so-called relevance is hanging by a thread.
Women were not invited to that table. Women were not invited to many tables in this nation. The reason we fought and busted our behinds to make sure that you didn't have to worry about this. And now to hear you talk about it and to hear anybody talk about the wokeness was put in place for a reason.
And judging by the stunned silence on The View, they certainly felt that reality check. It's as clear as day to anyone with eyes. The View panel is simply jealous that someone younger, sharper, and truly deserving of the spotlight is outshining them. After Joy Behar's crude remarks, Whoopi Goldberg swooped in, trying to spin another narrative that had Americans reeling. She went full mother hen mode, attempting to scold Karoline for what she called a lack of tolerance for weakness.
Because black people couldn't get into colleges. Because women could not get into the colleges they wanted to go to. This is all.
Whoopi wasn't offering wisdom. She was scrambling to minimize the damage. Karoline wasn't having any of it. In a now viral clip, Whoopi tried to blur the lines between civil rights and wokeness, pretending they were one and the same, but Karoline wasn't fooled. She called out Whoopi's flawed logic with ruthless precision, making it painfully clear that either Whoopi doesn't understand the difference or is deliberately misleading her audience. Based on Whoopi's reaction, it was clear she felt the burn when Whoopi talked about women not being invited to the table. She missed the point entirely. Women fought hard to earn a seat, and now they shouldn't have to worry about being heard. To hear Whoopi talk about wokeness, a movement created for a reason, was frustrating for Karoline. If Whoopi truly stood for women's rights, why didn't she call out Joy Behar for reducing Karoline's success to just her looks? Maybe it's because her so-called moral compass only points left instead of holding her co-host accountable. Whoopi chose to attack Karoline, especially after the 27-year-old used her first White House press conference to call out the legacy media for losing the trust of ordinary Americans. Predictably, Whoopi played the race card, steering the conversation toward identity politics instead of addressing the real issue, classic deflection.
Ironic that Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar and the rest of the ladies on The View spend their time calling Republicans the conspiracy theorists, but they have been wrong about everything they have said over the last couple of years.
Whoopi didn't stop there. She went full condescension mode, claiming Karoline didn't even understand what wokeness really means. According to Whoopi, the only reason Karoline criticized it was because she thought it was something terrible. Whoopi argued that wokeness isn't bad, saying, "That's why we fought. That's what we're fighting for. So you could stand at that podium. So Karine Jean-Pierre could stand at that podium. So women of all colors and beliefs could have the opportunity to break down doors. But let's be real. Karoline knows exactly what wokeness is, and that's why she called it out." Whoopi's attempt to gaslight the audience into thinking Karoline was just throwing around buzzwords completely backfired. If the hypocrisy wasn't already sky high, Karoline really put The View on blast with their latest outrageous claim, where they tried to pin an assassination attempt on Elon Musk. In a fiery takedown, Karoline pointed out the blatant irony of the host constantly pushing for accountability while recklessly spreading baseless accusations.
President Trump to Hitler. They have mocked him, they have shamed him, they have lied about him consistently on their show. And it was a joy to watch them on November the 6th when they realized that tens of millions of Americans do not listen to the...
Let's just say Karoline wasn't going to let them get away with it. A few years ago, the media was singing a whole different tune, but now they're so eager to dominate the narrative that they'll twist anything to fit their agenda.
She's young, but she's wise beyond her years, and she has access to the president, which is something someone didn't have.
Thanks to Karoline's courageous stance, the era of unchecked propaganda is coming to an end. With her push for accountability, The View and other legacy media outlets have operated without restraint, pushing narratives that suited them, controlling the conversation, silencing opposition, and shaping public opinion with little to no consequences.
Doesn't surround himself by anybody smart. And Joy Behar and those guys, of course this was going to happen. This is why conservative women just have to move on, do their thing, and not worry about the criticism from folks like that.
Let's face it, that's their biggest nightmare. Their entire playbook starts to fall apart when they can't freely spin the truth. Karoline Leavitt just flipped the script on legacy media, and The View is absolutely losing it. She announced a game-changing shakeup in the White House press pool, introducing a new media section to hold traditional outlets accountable for years of biased reporting and outright misinformation about President Trump. "We will call you out when we feel your reporting is wrong or there's misinformation about this White House." Levi said for decades, the Associated Press and the White House Correspondents Association have controlled the room, dictating who gets to ask questions and what narratives get pushed. But not anymore. Karoline made it crystal clear that these legacy media outlets won't get to run the show unchecked. Instead, 2 front-row seats, once reserved for White House staff, will now go to new media voices who actually question the establishment. If that wasn't enough to send The View into a meltdown, she also restored press passes for 440 journalists who have been wrongfully revoked under Biden's administration.
Really understood what it meant, or certainly the way Karoline Leavitt meant it when she made that statement, and she was conflating it with civil rights and how, women didn't have the right to vote or own property and all of that. That has nothing to do with wokeness, which is, of course, about putting people in there because of their immutable characteristics rather than the merit that they bring.
Although many applauded Karoline's drive for openness, it's clear that the last thing the View panel wants is a news source that genuinely questions their narratives. Their response, however, was far from supportive. Karoline made it clear that the press secretary's usual seat in the front row would now be called a new media seat. She added, "My team will examine applications and provide credentials to new media candidates who meet our requirements and successfully complete the U.S. Secret Service requirements to enter the White House complex." Key panelists from The View went utterly crazy at this news. Sunny Hostin sneered at the notion that new media reporters should be allowed to attend briefings, acting as though only the legacy media elites should be seated at the table. Then, with her typical holier-than-thou attitude, Whoopi Goldberg interjected, warning that under the new administration, people would just spout things. She said, "I don't always like the way they do it, but we have to have ourselves together, and we can't just spout things. So, I want that for everyone. The irony is hard to miss." Mainstream media, including The View, has been doing exactly that for years, spinning half-truths, twisting narratives, and pushing whatever suits their agenda. Now that Karoline is actually holding them accountable, Whoopi wants to talk about standards. Give me a break when Karoline used the term wokeness. Whoopi seemed to not understand what it really means or how it connects to civil rights. She mentioned issues like women not having the right to vote or own property, things that are completely unrelated to wokeness, which is about placing people in the spotlight based on their unchangeable traits rather than their merits at the end of the day, it's not about journalism or ethics. It's about attention. These hosts thrive on telling the public what they believe. And now that millions of Americans are turning to alternative media sources instead of traditional outlets, they're panicking. For the first time in years, they're losing control of the narrative, and they don't like it. We know for a fact that there have been lies pushed by many legacy media outlets in the country about this president, about his family, and we will not accept that. The 27-year-old historic press secretary said, reprimanding traditional media for losing trust. We will call you out when we feel your reporting is wrong, or there is misinformation about this White House now. The View is finally feeling the heat. For years, they had the luxury of running their mouths without any real pushback, spreading false information, smearing political opponents, and gaslighting their audience. But those days are officially over. Karoline Leavitt, the historic press secretary, has put legacy media on notice. It's worth noting that Karoline succeeded Karine Jean-Pierre, who made a point of reminding everyone, at every opportunity, that she was the first black immigrant woman to hold the role, as if identity alone qualifies someone for the job. But confidence speaks louder than labels, and Karoline has proven that real leadership isn't about ticking diversity boxes. It's about holding power accountable and speaking for the American people. Even Jen Psaki, who preceded Jean-Pierre, wasn't a fan of their shared strategy, calling it diminishing. Yet, The View continues to play the identity card over and over, hoping no one notices how hollow their arguments really are. Karoline, however, isn't playing that game. She's here to do the job, and do it well, but The View wasn't done embarrassing themselves just yet. After failing to take Karoline down with their cheap shots, they try to trap her with a classic gotcha question about illegal immigration. They thought they had her cornered. They thought she'd fumble. Spoiler alert, she and 500 arrests have been made so far since President Trump came back into office. Can you just tell us the numbers? How many have a criminal record versus those who are just in the country legally? They wanted Karoline to admit that Trump's policies would somehow be unfair to illegal immigrants, but she flipped the script and reminded them that Trump's America prioritizes law-abiding citizens over those who break the law. Just like that, their entire argument fell apart. But instead of admitting defeat, they doubled down with even more desperate attempts to spin the narrative, as Karoline pointed out. As far as this administration goes, I know the last administration didn't see it that way. So it's a big culture shift in our nation to view someone who breaks our immigration laws as a criminal. But that's exactly what this response not only dismantled their argument, but also made clear that Karoline is leading a new era in which the mainstream media can no longer twist the truth without consequences. The truth isn't just about facts. It's about prioritizing the needs of the American people and ensuring that everyone, from the White House to the press room, is held accountable for their actions.
The Democrats are in complete disarray because they have become a globalist party who like to spend taxpayer dollars on useless priorities just to cater to the left's demands here at.
For years, The View has acted as a mouthpiece of the Democratic agenda, endlessly parroting whatever narrative was handed to them by the left. Their hosts have fallen in line, pushing tired talking points and promoting progressive ideals without question. However, now that Karoline Leavitt has stepped into the spotlight, holding the media accountable for its glaring bias and hypocrisy, the carefully constructed facade of The View is starting to crumble. The left, which has long dominated media discourse, is now on the defensive, with figures like Karoline challenging their power and exposing the many flaws that were previously hidden behind their narrative-driven coverage for years. The View and other legacy outlets enjoyed the luxury of pushing a partisan agenda with little resistance. But now, when someone like Karoline dares to call them out, they are left scrambling, unable to respond. They've spent so long amplifying the left's demands that the second they face accountability, they begin to unravel. It's almost as if they're watching a house of cards collapse. Their so-called moral high ground is faltering under the weight of their own hypocrisy. Karoline's approach isn't just about calling them out. It's about forcing them to confront their own downfall in real time. She's revealing not only their flaws, but also the deep desperation with which they cling to relevance in an ever-evolving media landscape. As Karoline's critiques resonate with more and more Americans who are frustrated with the mainstream media's bias, The View and similar shows are left flailing for control of the narrative. Failing to regain their footing in reality is clear. The majority of Americans are fed up with the unchecked power of legacy media outlets and their left-leaning agenda. People are demanding that elected officials be responsible stewards of their tax dollars, reflecting their values rather than pushing radical progressive priorities that are increasingly out of touch with the everyday concerns of the American people. The growing discontent with the media's one-sided approach is palpable, and Karoline's rise to prominence is a direct response to that frustration by calling out the hypocrisy of The View and other mainstream outlets. Karoline is giving a voice to those who feel sidelined by the dominant media narratives. She is offering them a platform to express their frustrations and be heard. The pressing question now is, how long can The View and similar outlets continue to pretend they speak for the majority when their views are so clearly out of touch will they find a way to recover from this exposure? Or is this the beginning of the end for mainstream media dominance? As the media landscape shifts, more people are seeking alternative sources of information that provide balanced and honest perspectives. The View, once a dominant force in shaping public opinion, now finds itself under intense scrutiny. Their attempts to hold on to power are failing, and the voices of the left, once so certain of their control, are beginning to crack under the pressure. It's becoming increasingly evident that the days of legacy media outlets dictating the narrative may be numbered. The question now becomes, what's next? Will the mainstream media manage to claw back into power, or have they lost their grip on the narrative for good? It's clear that the tide is turning, and with Karoline leading the charge, there's no going back. This is just the beginning of a larger shift. As the fight for truth and accountability in the media grows stronger, the left will either adapt to this new reality or face further relevance. But one thing is certain, the battle is far from over. As this fight continues, the question remains, will The View and its peers be able to maintain their influence, or have they already reached a point of no return? The conversation is just getting started, and as the media's credibility continues to hang in the balance, it's essential to keep watching how this plays out for anyone invested in media accountability. Now is the time to pay attention, because the struggle is far from over. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because the media's hold on power is slipping. With figures like Karoline Leavitt leading the charge, this is only the beginning of what promises to be a much larger conversation. Thank you for watching.